All right, welcome coaches to another episode of the IFCA Journal podcast. I'm your host PJ Hedrington, and I would like to welcome our guest. I call him the legend. He's one of the diamonds in the rough we have here in Iowa. He's a good man, a good person, a good father, husband, all the things that you've embodied in a human being. He is Coach Tom Wilson from Dowling Catholic. His bio: he started at English Valley, Wilton, Dike, New Hartford, 21 years at Dowling Catholic, 9-time state champ. Oh man, we lost count of how many conference titles he's won. Regional Coach of the Year, State Coach of the Year, District Coach of the Year. I even think there's some national honors in there too with you, couple of those. But the thing that stood out the most to me was he has probably 8 NFL players from his career that have gone on to some success, whether it's Canadian Football League or the NFL or camps or spills like that. So it is truly a privilege of mine to welcome our guest, Coach Tom Wilson. What's up, man?
Hey, PJ, appreciate being here.
Yeah, hey, thanks. This is kind of a new platform for us. It's kind of different. Usually, you guys help out, Dowling guys help out with an article too, but now I get to get you face to face and talk. So this is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's you're getting with the times. Happy to be a part of it, and hopefully your listeners enjoy what we get a chance to talk about. And at least we're talking football, and it's January, so that's a good thing.
Man, I know. Right now, the big thing is, of course, the Super Bowl, and another big thing. The topic that I had a couple calls today was, Bill Belichick not getting in the Hall of Fame, the first ballot. That was a big deal today. So something
Which is
football. Oh my, really? Fact, yeah. All right, so this podcast here is going to be a little different, okay? For us coaches, Coach Wilson is gonna he's been around the block. He's had a lot of success. But we're gonna come at you as far as kind of directed towards some of our younger coaches and our new coaches in the profession. We're gonna share some ideas, some things, some stories, some kind of pitfalls, things to kind of avoid, things of that nature. So we're gonna get started here. You ready?
Let's roll.
All right. What's your coaching philosophy and how did you establish it?
Yeah, I think through the years, things get adjusted and you look at things differently. I think back, you mentioned English Valley, and I was 21 years old when I took that job. And as I alluded to you before we really got started, I probably had no business being the head coach of a program, no matter the size at that point. But at that point in time, I think I was just worried about success. What does it take to win ball games and things like that? The truth of the matter is, we got into this profession. I got into this profession to make a difference in kids' lives. I had, that for me growing up in Monroe, Iowa, and it was instrumental and still is within my life. And to me, my coaching philosophy revolves around relationships and trying to get kids to realize great things are possible, no matter who they are, where they're from, how old they may be. We can always improve and get better at everything that we do. And, we try to do that. We love our kids, we love them hard. And we care about them on and off the field. We have high expectations for them. So really, my philosophy revolves around care, relationships, hard work, and accountability.
Good. How should a young coach build their own?
You know, all of us are a product of what our experiences have been in our life in athletics, and obviously, as a young coach, you're going to lean upon that. I played for Larry Andrew in high school, who later became my father-in-law, and a lot of what I did at the beginning of my career was what I learned from him. Played a couple years for Jim Hirschberger at Buena Vista, and it was things that I learned there. And I think as you continue to go on in this profession, you have to be willing to learn from other people and listen and ask questions and grow. Me being on the back nine of my career, I'm still trying to be that way. And I think as a young coach, no matter what your position is at the time, you've got to be planning for, the next step or continuing to grow. I think it's really, really important that a young coach establishes what they want their program or their coaching career to stand for. And I would really guard against the overall success part of it because, you're trying to make the difference in lives of kids that are 14 to 18 years old. And oh, by the way, you want to try to win ball games. Well, it may not always be winning ball games or winning state championships or anything like that, but you can certainly make a difference in each kid's life that you have in your program if that's what your overall philosophy is.
What about like today's society where times have changed, where the pressure is winning in some of our school districts and some of our communities? It's all about win, 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 or you're gone. How does a young coach kind of balance that out?
Yeah, it's tough. I got caught up in that as a young coach and thinking that that's really all that matters, and it didn't take me long to learn otherwise. Today is different. I started my coaching career as a head coach in 1990. It's today is different. Social media, access to everything. It's a lot different, and things get blown up online, and even a lot of the social media stuff that we as adults don't see, the kids do. And I think it gets increasingly difficult to keep kids locked in, but you really have to get a singular focus of what your goals in your program and what you want them to be. And I think those have to be presented to your players, to your team on a regular basis. That, if you're looking at the end product and you're counting wins and losses at the end of the year, your chances of disappointment are probably pretty good because, everybody's heard people talk about being process driven. And it truly is. I mean, you have to worry about how you are day to day and the mindset of your team on a consistent basis. And some of your toughest coaching comes after a big win. And because, your kids are letting everybody tell them how good they are and how bad they'll beat the next opponent. And in some cases, it may be how bad they are and how they're going to get killed by the next opponent. So, I mean, you really have to stay locked in, keep your goals in front of you, keep the mission of why you got in this to begin with in front of you and stay the course. And I think that's really an important thing is if you truly believe in who you are and what you want to accomplish as a coach, you have to stay the course. And I've seen too many times where coaches get derailed because of outside noise and start second guessing themselves. All of us are going to make adjustments and make tweaks, but your overall philosophy and what you truly believe in isn't going to change. I think it's important for young coaches to stay the course. And, they might have an administrator that doesn't agree with them. They might have a powerful person in the community that doesn't agree with who you're starting at quarterback or, what your offense is, what your defense is, whatever it may be within your program. But if it's what you believe in and you think is best, you stay the course and make your adjustments where necessary.
How do you approach building the team culture and values? And again, I want you to look at this from as a younger coach compared to now where you're seasoned and you've got that kind of that experience. How would you guide someone?
Yeah, even as a seasoned coach, I mean, every year is different.
Right, right.
You're not totally starting over, but you're this team is starting over because the team that's in front of you has never been together as a whole before. And even when you have your culture or you feel like you have your culture in place, you've got new freshmen that are coming in your program every year. Sometimes it's easy to think, okay, they're just going to get it through osmosis or whatever. Well, they probably aren't. You have to continue to teach the culture that you want, the principles that you want within your program. And, each year, we meet with our team, really to determine, okay, what do you want this team to look like? I mean, it's your football team. It's not all of us coaches that are standing up here. It's your football team. And that's where we come up with our 5 to 6 core values per year. And maybe they be some like they are from the year before because they're that important. But this is this team's core values, not made by me, not made by anybody else on the staff, but it's made by the players in the room and the team itself. And we think it's really important that we recognize the kids for the core values that we see. So one of the things, and honestly, this has been a recent change for us in that, we'll recognize several kids every week based on a certain core value. So it may be character, it may be work ethic, it may be toughness, it may be faith, it could be a lot of different things. Again, depending on what the team deems to be the most important for them. And then each week we recognize kids, throughout our program who have uh, shown those core values in this past week, and we try to do that on a consistent basis, which I think helps get your message across of how important it is.
Okay. Well, good. Good, good, good. Now, how do you promote that on social media? If I was a younger guy and I'm into that social media aspect, what are some steps that you guys do?
And we do that, and I'll be the first to tell you that's not me being the social media guy, but, we have things. I have a coach that puts it on Facebook, we put it on Twitter, and we
Right, right,
do it out in front of our team. We make a deal out of it, inside the walls.
right.
Outside the walls, it's really Facebook and Twitter, and, making sure people, see the great things that our kids have been doing.
Okay. Good, good. You were mentioned earlier about your values and your core values. Okay, and you've got a lot of staff, you got a lot of staff and a lot of moving parts, and you're the athletic director and all those things. What's the challenge of teaching your staff and the people that you bring in your core values and making sure they transition that to the players?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I want to take it back a step because, I think we're going to sit here and talk quite a few things. And as a young coach, I thought I had to be the one that was doing it all, and
Right. Yep.
honestly, you can't do it all. Being in the weight room early in the morning to later at night, taking things up on your weekends. You get into the summer, you're doing your different workouts, 7-on-7 team camps,
Yep.
gone 7 days a week. You cannot do that. And, I would say at English Valley, even at Wilton, I was probably too much that way, thinking that I had to do it all. And then, being a grad assistant at Ball State certainly helped me to learn a different path. But you have to be able to hire assistants that you trust to help you, get these core values across, your mission across. And I think that's probably the first thing, PJ, is that, you've got to hire the people that you trust. And sometimes, you get in some jobs, you get what you get as your
Right. Correct.
assistant coach. And I mean, you can't go out on a national search and try to do something. And a lot of times you're trying to fill teaching positions, and you hope you have an administrator that realizes how important it is to have your coaches in the building and those types of things. But it comes back to coaching coaches. Everything that you deem is important, you have to emphasize to your coaches every bit as much as you do your players. And it's the assistant coach's job to help carry out your mission. So the first people to get your mission better be those assistant coaches, and they can help alleviate a lot of things and help the head coach in a lot of different ways. And that's probably as important in longevity as anything is surrounding yourself with people that can help you do the job that you want to get done. I've been fortunate enough, really in about every staff that I've been a part of that, we've stayed together, and the Dowling one is no different. We've lost some great coaches that have moved on to other opportunities, but yet we have a core group that have stayed together, some of them every bit the time that I've been there, and that certainly helps to have that continuity.
Okay. Good. All right. How do you handle difficult conversations with players and also with parents?
Yeah, I think there's no substitute for experience in a lot of things, and I think this is a topic that you know y- I think I probably made a lot of mistakes in my early part of my career, and I think I probably started seeing better through the parents' lens once I started having my own kids, and that certainly helps, but that's everybody's different. But to me, I think you just have to be honest. You have to be straightforward. I think you have to have all the tangible information at your disposal as possible. For example, every parent's going to think that their kid is working their fanny off and that they deserve a shot and they deserve a shot above everyone else and so on and so forth. Well, I've had those conversations too. And I can sit there and tell them, okay, this is the times your son has been in the weight room. This is the times that your son has been at 7-on-7. Here's the team average. Now let's look at how hard your son is working compared to everybody else. But at the end of the day, all of our kids, we're going to expect them to work hard, whether they're the most talented kid or the least talented kid. you have to work hard to get the opportunities within the program, and it's what you do with them at the end that is most important. And all of us, I don't know a coach alive that doesn't want to play as many kids as possible.
Correct. Yeah.
And all of us want to play kids and play as many as we possibly can, and for everybody to have a positive experience within your program. But quite frankly, that's an impossible task. So, you as a coach, if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm being fair to these kids. These are the expectations, and just communicate this to the parents and be very, I think upfront and honest of what you see, and I think that's gonna serve you as good as anything else. Now, I think there can be a difference between arrogance and upfront and honest. And, I think as a parent and those coaches that are parents, they understand that a little bit. They kind of see it through a parental lens. And I do think that that is helpful, as I mentioned before. But I just think that you have to sometimes parents just want to be heard.
Right.
And we have to be the sounding board at times. And, some parents can be very, very critical and downright nasty. And, I've taken the high road a lot of times. And I think you just have to realize the situation the parent is in and have a conversation. But at the end of the day, be honest with them about what you see and what you think. And if you have data to help you with that, that would be a great thing to have at your disposal. There's no way to get around difficult conversations. They're going to happen.
Right. And don't you feel like it's the hardest part is controlling your emotions, right? And not
But it
yeah.
It is. I mean, we as coaches, we're naturally probably fairly defensive. We know we put a lot of time and effort into what we do. And, oftentimes, we're taking time away from our own families to try to help theirs. And I think, a lot of times parents have to have somebody to blame, and sometimes they may be right. I can tell you this. I had a conversation, fairly early in my career, and it was about a kid's playing time in a scrimmage, of all things, a scrimmage. So, me as the head coach, you let your assistants, hey, take care of your positions, those types of things. And for whatever reason, this player didn't get much time in our scrimmage. And the parent had a conversation with me, and I looked at him and said, "You know what? You're absolutely right." And, you know, we learn a lot about ourselves and what we have to work on as a staff when situations like that come up. So, I'm like everybody else. I'll get defensive because I think we work our rear ends off to try to do the best that we can and to give kids a quality experience. But, sometimes those conversations, it may be best to listen for a while because you may learn something that you didn't know and learn about yourself and learn about their perception of your program because a lot of times perception is reality.
Correct, yeah. And something you said earlier is just take learning how to take the high road. A lot of times that is as a young coach, that's the most difficult thing to kind of come is just take the high road a lot of the times and you'll just listen and be all right. All right, next one. What's your approach to managing the pressure and expectations of both yourself and your players?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and I learned this through the years, and it's probably my wife that taught it to me more than anything else. But when I was at Ball State, I got to be around some great coaches. Bill Lynch, who was the head coach there, and then later became the head coach at Indiana. Kurt Mallory, who is a good buddy of mine, and he's the head coach at Indiana State today. And Bob Bartolomeo, who was the head coach at the University of Indianapolis. Spent a lot of time, especially around Bart and Kurt Mallory, and I kind of watched those guys, thinking, is that the career path that I want? And they did a great job trying to be husbands and fathers, as college football coaches. And I just kind of filed that away in my memory bank, and I didn't always live it all that well. After I left Ball State, I went to Dike, New Hartford, and honestly, I was grinding. I thought that was the only way to go is to grind and to do everything you could do to put that program and those kids in position to be successful. And for a lot of it, it worked and worked very well. For me, after we started having kids, my wife would remind me that me going working a football camp isn't a vacation. We needed to have a family vacation. Honestly, she was right.
Yep.
So, we started trying to do that with our kids, and for me, that helps, would help me recharge and just kind of, turn everything off for a week or however long it was. And that became, I think very, very important, not only for me in my career, but, as a dad, as a husband, and really the longevity into this. And I think that part is incredibly important. And, we still try to do that to this day, even though, our kids are adults now and we still try to get away and a lot of times we're still able to do things with our kids, but they have their own lives and we have to be off on our own. I think as players, I think as coaches you can be your own worst enemy in this, that every time you think you can get your hands on your players, you have to have your hands on the players. And to be honest with you, maybe this is old school, but I still believe in multi-sport athletes, and I believe in maximizing the time that you do have. I would tell you, I bet we do less in the summer football specific stuff than most of the teams that are on our schedule. I think it's important that the kids can be kids. They can play baseball in the summer. A lot of our kids, they also have basketball coaches wanting part of their time. They have wrestling coaches that have part of the want part of their time. And I think it's up to us as coaches to make all those summer calendars work for the kids instead of making the kids make the choice or do all of the extra or make decisions that we as adults could take care of. And so I think part of it is scheduling. I think part of it is maximizing your time. This year was a much different year for us in a lot of different ways. And as I mentioned earlier, as a younger coach and even, not that many years ago, I just embraced the grind and that's what we did. And that's what has led to our success. Well, you look at a lot of studies and things like that now, and I think Indiana's success this year brought a lot of things to light that, you don't have to be out there for 3 hours in practice. He would, I think he talked about hour and 45 minutes. I bet you this past season, on the average, our practices were at least 30 minutes shorter than what they have had been in any other year since I've been the head coach.
Wow.
A big part of that is, philosophically, I think a lot of it is how we're calling things and, shortening our verbiage, but that's probably a different podcast. But my point is,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I think that you have to be aware of the time that you're requiring your kids to be there and to do things. The work is the work. We know that. And we're not going to be successful without putting your work in and the time in. I just think managing that workload is really, really important for your players. And I also think having a singular focus and trying to keep the outside noise away from your kids. We alluded to some of this earlier, but we really don't talk about a state championship until it's time to play the state championship, until you
Right.
get into that week. The kids may have that goal. They're going to dream as little kids. They're dreaming about winning a title. Well, you're not going to change that, but
Right.
how
Nope.
they look at day by day, you can change, and what their focus is, you can change. And I think the biggest thing is to keep your eyes on the right now and how are we going to get better today? How are we going to get better in the weight room this morning? Those types of things instead of looking at the end result. I don't know if that is perfect, but that's through the years of trial and error. I would do a lot of things differently in my younger years if I knew then what I know now. And I think with our I think with our kids and trying to keep them locked in on what's most important right now is been very good to us.
Good, good, good. All right, so I have two questions left, but this is the last like football question. Like I said, I've been at your practice for several years. I go in the off season and take notes and just kind of watch. And I was always impressed by the tempo and how many coaches are involved and how fast you guys move and the amount of plays and everything that's just and the teaching that goes on. So that's been good. How do you approach game planning and what's your process for preparing for your opponents?
Yeah, this has really changed throughout the years. And each phase is different. And you know, keep in mind, it drives me nuts when, I'm at a clinic or whatever and talk to a coach and they say, well, you can do that because you're at Dowling. Well, I was also at English Valley, Wilton, and Dike, New Hartford.
Hmm.
So, and I grew up in Monroe, Iowa. So I'm pretty well versed in how things are at,
Right. Yeah.
the smaller schools and things like that. all I can do is tell you, the best of how we're doing it now because I think it's the best that I've done it. And, offensively, some of the, coaches out there may be, hearing a lot about, you know, Bixby, Oklahoma, and they've won like 11 out of the last 12 state championships and had a ton of success. There's a lot of videos out there, things like that. But, we do a lot of things in our offensive game planning, like what they do. They have their fastballs, which are their main plays. They have their curveballs, they have changeups, and they have home runs. So they categorize their plays into that, and that really helps you. Okay, these fastballs are what we're gonna make our living on. How can we dress up those plays? With your curveballs and things like that. How can we dress up those plays and still run the same thing?
Hmm.
With your change-ups, okay, what are plays off of your base plays? And then home runs, that's when we're going for the big play off of your base plays.
Hmm.
So that's really, and again, I can't take any credit for that because I learned it from Bixby. But then one of the big things for us, Brady Walls joined our staff this year, who's been the offensive coordinator at Ankeny, had a lot of success, actually coached down in Oklahoma and is and knows a lot of the guys on that Bixby staff. Well, he joined our staff this past year and he's been really, really important in that concept for us and
Hmm.
us going through it and keeping us organized on that path. And no matter what your method is, we've all been there. You think you have to run a million plays and you try to start outsmarting everybody. To be honest with you, most of the time it's not going to work, and it's not going to work against the best teams that you have to beat.
Right. Yeah.
You're better off, whatever it is that you do, get good at it, and then work out the rest of your offense off of that. Defensively, and I will sit in our defensive staff meetings and things like that. I don't run them. I do have opinions, and they even let me use those once in a while. But we, it's very much the same as, okay, you're looking at formations, you're looking at plays, and how are we gonna defend it? And then, what's our curveball off of that?
Right. Right.
How we can give them one look one time, how are we gonna give them a different look the next time? It's really the same concept. And special teams wise, Ryan Van Veen is our special teams coordinator. He's been an avid listener of this podcast. He and I meet on Sundays, go through every phase, go through adjustments, go through tweaks, go through personnel of our opponent, and then that we relay that down to the rest of the different guys that are helping us with special teams. So, that's really the three phases of it.
Hmm.
The one thing that we'll do, and I think our defensive guys would tell you that, and our offensive guys probably would the same, is the game still comes down to blocking and tackling. And if you're not going to work on the fundamentals of the game, I don't care what your X's and O's look like or what your fastballs are or your curveballs are or whatever it may be, it's blocking and tackling.
Very true. All right. Okay. This is our last on this podcast. This is our last question. Okay. And it's usually something funny or goofy or something we have conversations about. Okay. All right. Here's the question for you. And I want you to answer this honestly. All right. Being a parent or being a grandparent? Which one's better?
Being a new grandparent, I can tell you, has been one of the most phenomenal things ever. I've got my three kids, and there's nothing I have any more pride in my life than being a dad. But being a new grandparent has been awesome, and looking forward to watching him grow. And I can promise you, somebody else is going to be coaching him. It's not going to be me.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, how do if I'm a coach and I want to reach out to you, what's the easy way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I would just email me at twilson@dowlingcatholic.org. To be honest with you, I welcome that. If somebody, it's important to myself, therefore it's important to my staff. I can remember years ago, bugging Gary Swenson and about how he's running inside zone. And now Gary and I have been coaching against each other for the last 21 seasons. So a lot of people helped me through the years, and I'm certainly willing to do the same. And we all learn from each other. That's what's great about the sport and the coaches in the sport.
Well, I just want to thank you again for joining us on this podcast, and again, we appreciate you taking the time out. And coaches, like I said, man, if you've got a bucket list, fill the coaches up in your car, SUVs, whatever it is, and drive up to Dowling and sit down with that staff. Great guys, great people from top to bottom. You'll learn a lot about football. So, Coach Wilson, thank you so much and appreciate you. And coaches, thank you for listening. And my favorite words, keep grinding.
All right. Thanks, man.